I want to welcome you to the Diverse Jewish Books podcast, where our goal is to uplift diverse experiences in Jewish Kidlit. Today, I am very excited to welcome debut author of the upcoming book, Elsa's Chessboard. Hi, Jenny. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Hi, it's great to be here.
Jenny, the first question that I always ask people, tell me about yourself and what being Jewish looks like to you.
I was raised in a non-religious family, but Judaism, I think, was at the essence of who we were, and it was very much our family's history. My parents were both children during the Holocaust, and they were refugees. My dad's family went to Shanghai, where he spent his childhood. And my mother's family, which is her family's the Elsa, her mother's Elsa of the book, they went to England and then they came to San Francisco by way of Boston. And my parents met as teenagers in Hashomer, which was a Jewish youth group, and that was very important to them at that point in their lives. And my dad's twin brother went to Israel when he was quite young, 17 or 18, and is still there. He's the only one alive of the three brothers at this point, but he has lived his life on Mishmar HaEmek, which is a kibbutz in Israel, and he has four daughters, and they're all close to in age. And I didn't even meet them until I was 18, and the first time I went to Israel, and now we're very, very close. It was important to me that my children have a Jewish identity, and that seemed harder to me to do. My husband isn't Jewish, but so we did join a synagogue when they were young, and they both became bat mitzvahed. And I think that's been very good for them and very important to them. They're all grown up now. I think most of the way that I've really explored my identity really is through literature and books. I've always been really drawn to Jewish authors, and I really enjoy reading about the Jewish experience. But one thing, I think this relates to your what you're doing. When I was growing up, there were no books that mirrored my experience, and let alone any books that I read that had a Jewish character in it, even a secondary character. And that makes me so happy now that there's so many books out there. And I, as a former librarian and as a reader, I'm gobbling them up. I can't read them fast enough. And I'm so happy for kids that they're there. And I think one of the things I appreciate about what you're doing is that you're recognizing and showcasing the diversity of the Jewish experience and celebrating it. And there isn't just one story, there's countless stories. And my book, Elsa's Chessboard, is just one of those stories.
Elsa's chessboard really spoke to me as, a fellow descendant of Holocaust survivors, as someone who can connect deeply to this immigrant experience, the idea of maybe rebelling a little bit against that identity and then coming back to it in time. Can you show us Elsa's chessboard here? It's
Love to.
coming out momentarily.
That's the cover.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
And can you tell us a bit about Elsa's chessboard?
Sure, I'd love to. So it's based on the life of my grandmother, Elsa Constant Weiss. It's a historic fiction picture book, and she was born in 1900 in Vienna, Austria. And her older brothers, played chess, and she watched them play and longed to play too, but they always said, no, no girls, no, girls don't play chess. And Oma gradually wore them down. She was very persistent, and they taught her how to play chess. And it turned out she really had a knack for it, and she was good at it. And they ended up giving her her own chessboard when she was on her 10th birthday. So she continued playing chess even as she grew up. In fact, she married her favorite opponent. And when World War II came and the Holocaust, they had to escape, and they went to, they ended up in San Francisco. So Elsa ended up in San Francisco, where she was in a city of strangers with no one who spoke her language. But luckily, she had her chessboard, and that provided a way to connect with people, to make friends, and that was great until her chessboard went missing. And then Elsa wondered if she would ever play again. And that's the story.
Can you talk specifically about why you wrote this story?
Yeah. Well, I think I wrote it because I loved my grandmother, and the story is definitely inspired by her. I grew up with her. She lived with us from the time I was very young, and we were very close. We shared a lot of interests. She was a wonderful listener, um, and we had we were just, as I said, just really best friends. Um, the only thing we didn't share was a love of chess, unfortunately. And she would say, I could just hear her voice in German saying, "Oh, Jenny, wouldn't you like to teach me? Wouldn't you like me to teach you how to play? It'd be so fun. You'd like it." And I'd always say, "No." I was too busy. I was reading a book. I was with my friends. And my sister said no, too. And my mother before us had said no. So the people she loved most in the world didn't play chess. So, anyway, now all these years later, thinking about that, I can't go back in time. I can't change that. I wish I could. But what I thought I could do was write a book that celebrated Elsa's life and celebrated the game, her love of this game, the love of chess. So that's why I wrote it.
It's so heartfelt. There's this wonderful intergenerational
Mm.
story in it. And then there's the theme of this universal language, too, that chess provides because you play that particular type of chess. You play chess in the same way with the same rules worldwide. But can you talk about maybe why you, what, like the themes for you, why those were the ones that you brought up in the book?
Yeah, I really wanted to do something intergenerationally in the story because, as I mentioned, I was raised in an intergenerational house with three generations, and my children, when they were young, knew Elsa, and they loved Elsa, and she loved them. So I knew the story was going to be intergenerational. Um, I also really wanted to write a picture book because I'd been a librarian and I had seen the power of picture books and how much kids are drawn to them and love them and how powerful they can be. I wanted to tell the story of a a Jewish refugee who went through the darkest of times, lost many members of her family, and yet she was a very resilient, very brave woman. And I do feel that one of the things that helped her was her passion for chess. I think it really was what allowed her to find connection and joy. And I think that is one of the themes of the book that I hope comes across.
It's clearly such a beautiful personal story. What was your experience like writing it?
I had such a wonderful experience writing it, and I didn't realize at the time how lucky I was because since then I've written two other books. So I realized, wow, everything just lined up so perfectly. Um, and there's such an element of luck in this whole publishing a journey. But I mean, the first thing that happened that I think was really lucky for me was that I took this class it was an extension course at Stanford, and this was all during COVID, so everything was online. I couldn't figure out how to tell the story. I was struggling with that, and they gave this prompt that just made it all clear to me. The prompt was, "What can't your character live without?" And as soon as I heard that, it's just like this little light bulb went up, and I thought, oh, Elsa can't live without her chessboard. There's my story. So I wrote it, and I knew I needed to do more. I knew it wasn't quite right, but I couldn't figure out why. so I started working with a freelance editor. She was really helpful and figured out, sort of diagnosed the issue, which was it needed more of a story arc. And also, she just challenged me to be bigger and bolder and think about things in a different way. And so I went back to the drawing board, and that was hard. You know, it's hard when you have to do that, but it was worth it. And when I finished, and we both felt good about it, she put me in touch with a friend of hers who was an illustrator, Julie Downing. And I know that this is, again, so unusual. You don't get to, that's not how it usually happens at all. But Julie really liked the book, and she sent it to her publisher, Neil Porter. And he liked the book, and then, he agreed to publish it, and that's how it happened. So as I said, it was very lucky. Everything just lined up.
It's Basheret. The whole thing was meant to be.
I hope, yeah, I
And
think
it sounds too like a bit of cathartic experience writing it. Like you might have like a little bit of closure in the relationship
so.
with your
Hmm.
grandmother.
Yeah, yeah, it was. It's really brought, well, what it's done is really brought up so many memories of her, which has, yeah, been really wonderful. She's been gone
When
since 1995, so it's been a long time, but, it's really, yeah, it has brought me kind of back to our relationship, and yeah, it's been nice.
it seems she was a really special figure in your life.
Yes, she was. Yeah.
When you went through the revisions are really hard.
Mhm.
When, when you went through the revision process with the editor, what were the elements that are now in the book that you feel really strongly about that brings something unique and special to the story?
Well, as I said, I think the original way I had written it was it was more flat. It was like Elsa played chess, and then Elsa played chess, and Elsa played, she played chess on the boat coming over. She played chess in the boarding house. And so I think the story now has more of an arc, actually, where her chessboard gets taken away. I think that's the biggest change, probably. And by doing that, I took out some of the other elements early on in the story. So it became um, maybe less biographical and more of a story. And I think that's what needed to happen. Although I do feel it's very true to who she was and her character. Yeah.
As the book enters readers' hands, it's coming out in the coming week. We hope so many people pick this book up. What do you hope readers take away from their reading of Elsa's Chessboard?
I hope that it will give readers some insight into the refugee experience. Elsa's story was very specific to a time and place, but I think there's a real universality to what she experienced. And I guess my hope is that it would inspire kindness and respect for refugees and immigrants. Maybe children in a class will reach out in friendship to others who are newcomers. Maybe kids who are newcomers can see a bit of themselves in Elsa. And that's what I hope. And of course, I hope it will inspire them to play chess, because that would make Oma, my grandmother, very happy. There is some back matter on chess in the book, some resources. So if a reader is interested or parents are interested, there's a lot of ideas about how to get started.
One of the things we actually haven't talked about yet in this conversation, but I want to circle back to, is this theme early on in the book that Elsa had headwinds getting to play chess because she was a young girl and it was more of a male activity or male game to play. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that theme meant, either in your Oma's life or in the story itself?
Well, Oma was, I think, a very unusual woman in many ways. She bucked a lot of trends. She played chess when no other girls, or if she didn't know of any other girls and women that played. And this was a theme throughout her life. We recognized that, my sister and I, and we were proud of her. We knew she was the only woman in her chess club. And I remember when another woman finally joined, it was this big deal. And she also was, she cut her hair short when everybody had their hair long. She wore pants when everybody wore dresses. And that was how, just who she was. Um, how did it come out in the book? I think it came out in the book that she didn't take no for an answer. She just kept asking. And eventually, her brother said yes. And she did that the same with asking people to play chess. At first people didn't want to play chess. There's a scene in the when she's working in the factory where nobody wants to play. They're like, "No, women don't play." And she was like that in real life, and I hope that comes through in the book. She really didn't take no for an answer.
Her personality really shines in the book.
Good.
It's beautiful. Have you gotten any reader responses yet that have really stuck with you?
The book comes out next week on the 29th. So far, what I have is a box of books that I got from the publisher, which is very exciting to get that. So I've only shown it to family and friends, but I will tell you what my favorite response was. I went out to lunch with this woman, Haiti, who was my mother's best friend. Haiti's now 91 years old. And they met when they were little girls, refugees, 8 years old, at the Jewish Community Center in San Francisco at the swimming pool. They were taking swimming lessons. And they were friends throughout my mother's life. And Haiti knew my grandmother since the time she was 8, and she knew her, all the way up until my grandmother passed away at 95. So there's nobody in the world right now who knew my grandmother longer than Haiti. And so we went out to lunch, and I was really nervous about showing it to her because, as I've mentioned, parts of it are fictionalized, and I just was wondering what she would think. Would she see things that didn't quite weren't true to Oma and whatever? But she, read it really carefully, and I could see she was really looking at all the pictures and everything. And then at the end, she looked up at me and um, she said, "Your mother and grandmother would be so proud of you." And that just, yeah, that was just like the nicest thing she could have said. So
That must have been more than all of the validation you could ever have wanted for
that
this.
was yeah, it was. Yeah,
What a gift to hear
yeah,
that.
that was. It really was.
One of the last questions that I'll ask you, you've had a wonderful, unique path to publication with this story. And you have, we hope that we'd see more coming from you in the near future. What is one bit of advice that you would give to aspiring authors as they begin or are in the middle of their journey here?
Well, I can only speak, from my own experience, and I don't know how relevant this is to other people, but it might be. I was very surprised at how social writing is. When I started out on this journey, and it was during COVID, I thought it was very solitary, but as it turned out, it hasn't been for me. I'm in a writing group and a promo group, and I've taken classes, and I guess that's what I recommend to people is to certainly a writing group is I've found really helpful. Um, Taking classes, reading other people's work, as well as having other people read your work. I That's my recommendation, and yeah, it helps. It's helped me a lot, and it's been a surprise how much I've enjoyed it and how nice it's been.
Would it also be fair to say that you have written stories so far that only you can tell?
I think that's true. Yeah, I think so. All of my stories, yeah. Isn't that true for everybody who writes in a way? I mean, or that we'd all tell, or it might be a similar story, but we'd all tell it in a different way, you know?
The story that you tell then the passion that you have for it, no one else can replicate that.
No. Yeah, and it's hard sometimes to find those stories, but it's worth it. I don't know that I could write anything else unless I did feel that passion for it.
That's that sounds right. And Elsa's chessboard, the passion and the love and the care and that connection to your Oma, even though she's been gone since the 90s, it's so present in the story.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to see Elsa's chessboard out in the world soon.
Thank you. It's been really a joy talking to you. It's been great.